My fiancée convinced me to live with her family to save money, but when I secretly learned their language, I discovered she was a professional scammer, and I was her next victim. Now, she and her entire family are in prison. I'm 28 years old. I work in tech since I graduated from college, and I need to tell this story because I literally saved myself from losing everything. And when I say everything, I mean my money, my house, probably my sanity, everything. I guess I should start from the beginning. When I met Alina like 3 years ago, I mean, at that time, she seemed like the perfect woman, you know? She was beautiful, intelligent, always listened to me when I talked about my work, even though she didn't understand much about programming, and we had this connection that I had never felt with anyone else. She came from an Eastern European country, had arrived in the United States a few years ago to study, and I thought it was incredible how well she spoke English considering it wasn't her first language. My friends told me I was moving too fast with her. But when you're in love, you don't listen to those things. You know what I mean? We dated for a year and a half before I proposed. It was at an Italian restaurant she loved, nothing too elaborate but romantic. And when she said yes, I felt like my life was finally taking shape. I had a good job making like 6 figures a year, had bought a small but decent apartment on the outskirts of the city, and now I had the woman I was going to spend the rest of my life with. My parents, Stephen and Carol, were happy for me, although my mom told me something that I completely ignored at the time. She said that Alina sometimes looked at her in a strange way, like evaluating her or something, but I just thought it was nerves about meeting my in-laws. You know how mothers are, always seeing things that don't exist. The thing is that after the engagement, Alina started talking about how we should save money for the wedding, that it was expensive, and that her family also wanted a traditional ceremony from their culture that was going to cost quite a bit. I agreed, obviously, but then she suggested something that in retrospect was the first giant red flag that I completely ignored. She said we should move in with her family for a while, like 6 months or a year, to save the apartment money and thus have more for the wedding and to start our life together. Her mother, Natasha, and her brother, Dmitri, lived in a bigger house like 2 hours away, and she argued that they had plenty of space, and that way I could get to know her family better before we got married. It sounded reasonable, right? Like, many couples live with their parents before getting married to save money? That's pretty normal. So I agreed. I packed my things, put my apartment up for rent with the help of a friend who's a real estate agent, and moved with Alina to her family's house. The first few days were weird, but not alarming, let's say. Natasha was very nice to me, always cooking traditional food from her country and asking me if I liked it, if I needed anything, that kind of thing. Dmitri was more reserved, didn't speak much English, so basically we just nodded at each other, and that was it. But there was something that started to bother me almost immediately, and it was that they constantly spoke in their language when I was present. Literally, we could be having dinner, the four of us, and suddenly, Alina, Natasha, and Dmitri would start speaking in their language for minutes, sometimes arguing heatedly, and when I asked what was going on, Alina would just say something like, "Nothing, honey, just family stuff," or, "My mom is upset because Dmitri can't get a job." Like 2 months passed and things got more uncomfortable. Natasha started making comments about my money, like apparently casual but that I now know weren't casual at all. She'd ask how much exactly I made, how much I had saved, if my apartment was paid off or if I still had a mortgage, if my parents had left me any inheritance, those kinds of invasive questions that I answered because I thought it was normal for my future mother-in-law to want to know that I could take care of her daughter. Alina also started talking more frequently about combining our finances, about opening a joint account, about putting my name on papers that she never let me see completely before she put them away. She'd say things like, "When we're married, everything will be ours anyway, why wait?" And I, like an idiot, thought it made sense. The truth is, I started to feel like something wasn't right. Like 3 months into living there. It wasn't anything concrete, just this feeling in my stomach, you know? Like when you know someone's talking about you but you can't prove it. Natasha and Dmitri looked at me in strange ways when they thought I wasn't watching, and the conversations in their language became more frequent and more heated. One night I heard Natasha yelling at Alina in her room. It was like 1 in the morning, and although I didn't understand the words, the tone was clearly angry. like Alina had done something wrong or wasn't complying with something. When I asked her the next day, she told me her mom was stressed about money and had taken it out on her, nothing more. So I did something that probably saved my life, or at least my bank account. I decided to learn their language. I didn't tell anyone, especially not Alina, but I started taking online classes during my lunch break at work. A coworker, Emma, spoke the same language because her family was from the same region, and when I casually told her I was learning, she offered to help me. I didn't tell her why I was really doing it, just that I wanted to surprise Alina by speaking her language at the wedding. Emma was a good teacher, and I worked pretty hard at it. Like I dedicated an hour or two each day to studying in secret. Another 2 months passed and my understanding of the language improved a lot. I could understand like 60 or 70% of what they said when they spoke, although I still couldn't speak it well. And what I started to hear made me feel like I was in a horror movie. Natasha constantly asked when we were going to open the joint account, why I kept delaying it, if Alina wasn't convincing or attractive enough. Dmitri made comments about how they needed access to my money soon because they had debts to pay. And Alina, my fiancée, the woman I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with, answered things like, he's being difficult, he's more cautious than we thought, or I need more time. I can't pressure him too much, or he'll suspect. It was surreal. I literally felt like my brain couldn't process what I was hearing. But the worst part, the one that made me realize I was in real danger, was one night when I got home early from work. They were having an argument in the living room. They didn't hear me come in because they were yelling, and I left my phone recording in my pocket before getting closer. Natasha was furious, yelling at Alina that 5 months had already passed and they still didn't have access to my bank accounts, that the plan was that by now they should already have at least half my money transferred. Alina responded that I wasn't like the others, that I asked more questions, that I had more involved family. And then Natasha said something that froze my blood. She said, "You have 1 more month or we look for someone new. This one is no longer worth the effort if he's not going to cooperate." Dmitri added something about maybe they should speed things up, make me sign papers or something. I didn't completely understand that part, but it sounded threatening. I left the house as quietly as I had entered, got in my car, and just sat there for like half an hour, shaking. I couldn't believe it. I simply couldn't process that my entire 2-year relationship had been a lie, that the woman I loved saw me only as a bank account with legs. I called my mom crying, like I couldn't even speak properly, and she immediately told me to come to her house, not to go back to that crazy house. But I needed evidence. I needed proof of what they were planning. So I told her no, that I was going to go back, and that I was going to record everything I could for a few more days. I went back like nothing had happened, put on a normal face, even though inside I was destroyed. I told them I had gone to buy something for dinner and acted completely normal the rest of the night. The next few days were torture. Basically living with people I knew wanted to rob me, smiling at them, kissing Alina, pretending everything was fine while I recorded every conversation I could. Emma helped me translate the recordings, and when she heard everything, her face went pale. She told me this wasn't just a plan to rob me, it was an organized operation, that they mentioned other names, other previous victims, that they talked about this as if it were a family business they had been doing for years. The straw that broke the camel's back was when Alina asked me to sign some papers. She said they were to add my name to her health insurance or something like that, but when I looked at them carefully with a lawyer I consulted in secret, it turned out they were documents that would give her legal power over my accounts in case of emergency. The lawyer looked at me like I was crazy and told me under no circumstances should I sign that it was basically handing over the keys to my financial life to someone else. That's when I knew I had to get out of there immediately. I already had enough evidence, and every day that passed was a risk that they'd discover I knew, or that they'd find another way to access my money. I coordinated everything with my parents. One Saturday when Alina, Natasha, and Dmitri went out to do I don't know what, my dad arrived with a moving truck he rented, and we literally packed all my stuff in 2 hours. I left the engagement ring on the kitchen table with a note that just said, "I know everything," closed the door, and left. My mom had called the police meanwhile and had given them all the information and translated recordings. I stayed at my parents' house waiting for Alina or Natasha to try to contact me, but surprisingly, There wasn't a single call, not a message, nothing. It was like they knew they had been discovered and just disappeared. The police investigation revealed things that still give me chills. Turns out Natasha, Dmitri, and other members of their family had been doing this for over a decade. They had a complete system, like the women in the family, including Alina and other cousins, posed as young students or professionals on dating apps, specifically looked for men with stable jobs and not much family, fell in love with them, eventually suggested living together with the family to save money, and once they had access to their finances or got them to sign legal documents, they basically left them dry. They had victimized like 8 or 9 guys before me, some of whom lost tens of thousands of dollars. One lost his entire house. The police told me I was lucky to realize in time that most victims don't realize until it's too late and they're financially ruined. The officer who handled my case, James, explained to me that it was difficult to catch these operations because victims are usually too embarrassed to report it, and when they do, the scammers have already moved to another city or state. But in this case, with my recordings and with the evidence they collected when investigating, they had a solid case. They found documents in the house showing their entire operation, like a manual on how to select victims, what to say, when to pressure for money. They even had fake profiles saved of potential victims. It was sick. They literally treated fraud like a full-time job. The legal process took like a year. I had to testify. I had to tell the whole story in front of a judge. I had to see Alina in court and hear her say that she really loved me, that she was never part of the plan, that her mother forced her. But the recordings didn't lie. In the recordings, she talked about me like I was just another job, another guy to get money from. In the end, Natasha received 8 years in prison, Dmitri 6, and Alina 4+ deportation after serving her sentence. Other family members who were involved also received varying sentences. Now, like 2 years after all this, I'm back in my apartment. I work at the same company but with a better position, and honestly, I still have trouble trusting people. I went to therapy for a while because I developed some paranoia. Like every time I met someone new, I wondered what their true intentions were, if they saw me as a person or as an opportunity. My parents supported me incredibly throughout the whole process. I don't know what I would have done without them. And Emma, my coworker who helped me with the translations, became one of my best friends. Sometimes we go out for coffee, and she helps me process everything that happened. In the most important lesson I learned, apart from the obvious red flags like financial pressure and secrets, is that when your gut tells you something is wrong, it's probably wrong. I had that feeling in my stomach for months, but I ignored it because I wanted to believe I was being paranoid, that I was being unfair, that love was enough to overcome any doubt. But real love doesn't make you feel uncomfortable, doesn't pressure you, doesn't make you constantly question what's happening. I still haven't had a serious relationship again. I don't know if I'm ready yet, but at least now I know exactly what to look for and what to avoid. And I have my money intact, my house, my job, my life, everything I almost lost for trusting the wrong person.